Hi, Arindam ji. A good morning to you. I guess it's good afternoon in India. Um,
Yes,
I'm,
good morning to you.
I am Rajiv. It's good to talk with you. We are going to review your resume um, with particular um, eye that we are recording this video so that other people can watch it and take instruction, at least as a preliminary matter, of where their own resumes would play out if they were to try the categories usually available for green card as well as temporary work authorization for people who are considered to be very accomplished, and there are some technical words we'll use as we go along, very accomplished in their own fields. Uh, Whether you are, let's start by, I am sharing my screen with you. Let's start by going to, let's start with the green card process first. So if you go to our website and you look at green card and citizenship, you see that there is a category, employment based green cards, and there's a category called EB. Let's see, that screen is too small for this. Let me see how I can make it to work. Okay, here we go. So we want to go first into the EB1 category. Why do we like the EB1 category? Because it is reserved for three categories of people, two of which potentially apply to you. Extraordinary ability people, so anybody, and this is the way they define it, who's got extraordinary ability in sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics. So if you are somebody who's got extraordinary accomplishments in these areas, sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics. When they say arts, they mean all kinds of arts, including performing arts, movies, etc. For scientists, this is a very attractive category usually because it does not require a job offer in the United States. So potentially, if you qualify under this category, you could apply, get a lawyer here, apply, and if you win the category, in time, you will just go to the consulate, get your green card, and enter the United States. It's as simple as that. So extraordinary ability aliens, which is called EB1A category. Okay. This category is also particularly attractive to people who are born in India, China, Philippines, Mexico. These are some of the countries that have a very big backlog of applicants in other categories. So I am definitely going to look at extraordinary ability alien category for you and how that plays out. I have your resume open on a different screen, like I said, to protect your privacy. Um, I'm going to go over it and I'm going to make my comments about what the government is looking for and how that would play out. So EB1A. There's also a category called EB1B, which is outstanding researchers, professors. Okay. This category is also available to scientists, engineers, anybody, any profession, like I said, anybody who has accomplishments in sciences, art, athletics, etc. They could qualify for these categories. Now, outstanding researcher and professor and extraordinary ability, what is the difference? First of all, these jobs or these green cards do require you to have a job offer in the United States. So you must have either a research or a faculty. It doesn't have to be tenure track. As long as it is non-temporary, you could potentially qualify under this category. What are we looking for? Either you are going to work for a university institution of higher education, or if you're going to work in the private industry in research, you are going to get a job with an organization that has at least three full-time researchers, not including you. Okay, I'm throwing a lot of information at you because we'll make a recording of this. You'll have time to actually review it, and I'll be happy to answer and do a follow-up call with you to clarify any doubts that you might have developed. Okay, so if you are going to, when you are doing an EB1B or outstanding researcher or professor, you're getting a certain kind of job, teaching in higher education or uh, research. Research can be university type or it can be for private employers such as a pharmaceutical organization or a lab where they employ at least 3 full-time researchers, not counting you, and they have a good history of research accomplishments such as patents or publications. A lot of private organizations qualify under that. Okay, so let's again review what we have learned. EB1A doesn't require a job, but the degree of proof of your accomplishments is much higher. I'll get into that. EB1B requires job, requires a certain kind of employment, and also to add to that requires 3 years of experience, which you have. I've seen your resume. That's not a problem for you. But sometimes people can run into that difficulty and they say, what about my PhD research? Can I count that? And the answer is under certain circumstances, yes, but it can get tricky. It's usually better. So if you have postdoc experience or even pre-doctorate experience, there's no requirement that the experience must be postdoctoral. Only thing that is required is it is research or teaching. Okay, so for you, actually, you qualify probably under both because you've got teaching experience, you've got research experience, you've got lots of experience. Okay, so if you got a job in the United States, your life could be a lot easier. Okay, the third category that is potentially applicable to people in your situation, professionals from outside the United States, is called national interest waiver. And that category, nobody really understands how it works. The idea is, honest to God, it's a very odd category. And the problem with that category is because of lack of guidelines. The availability of that category, as well as whether or not a case will get approved under that category, is impossible to predict. Okay, national interest waiver simply says this: prove to us that your employment in the United States is in the national interest. That's a very difficult question to answer or prove. Okay. When they want to deny a case, they'll come up with impossible questions. For example, they will say, USCIS will send us a request for evidence saying, how is Arindam's employment in the United States much more important than other peers that he has? In other words, what distinguishes him from his peers? Difficult question to answer. How do you define peers? Somebody who's got 50 publications like you do, or somebody who just has a PhD, is that your peer? So peer according to your degree of accomplishment, or peer according to just your education? Nobody really knows these answers. And the even more difficult one, and this is the one that really stumps us, very difficult to answer: how would national interest suffer if Arindam were not to work in the US? I mean, come on, even Obama could leave the USA tomorrow and we would not miss him for 2 days. Okay, because nobody is indispensable. We all know that. We may want to believe that we are indispensable, but we are not. So national interest waiver is a difficult category. But one example I'll give you of a very interesting national interest waiver case we did a few years ago. This was a scientist who did not have very advanced qualifications or things that would qualify him for EB1A. He had developed a very interesting concept: packaging for foods, which was edible. So the packaging itself was edible. You would first eat the chips, then you would eat the bag containing the chips. Okay, very interesting process, right? So he had patented that, and we were able to get him a national interest waiver quite easily. Why we don't like national interest waiver for people from India, China, Philippines, Mexico is because it comes under EB2 category. EB2 category is backed up 7-8 years currently. Okay, so even if you got the green card approval, it will take you 8 years to get here.
It's too long.
Too long. EB1A can potentially be wrapped up within a year. Reasonable. Year and a half maybe. Normally that's the time frame. Okay. So 3 categories we talked about: EB1A, extraordinary, no job required, but high degree of proof; outstanding, job required, certain kind of job required, national interest waiver, no job required, but EB2. Okay. So these are the three categories we look at whenever I'm talking to a scientist or a performer. We did a EB1A for a very famous flute player from India just recently. He is a Grammy nominated flute player. And again, we had to go through this whole analysis. Interestingly, and this is where I also want to add the context. Remember, USCIS is always unpredictable in these categories because they're not mathematical. You never know what they are going to do. Okay. And your lawyers are going to get paid whether you win or you lose. So I should be telling you, Arindam, your resume is, I always say this, it's like Taj Mahal. I have never seen a better resume in my life because if you hire me, I get paid whether you win or you lose. That's one thing you need to remember. Second thing is the unpredictability of the system. With this flute player that I'm talking about, he got a denial of the EB1A. And I told him, I said, this is a wrong denial. I don't agree. I want to file an appeal. I won't charge you for it because I'm so convinced they are wrong. We filed an appeal. I lost. I said, I want to try again. Remember, there is no limit to how many times you can try these categories. You can apply every day of your life if you like. Okay. I applied a second time, same evidence, everything same, they approved the case. So first time they denied the case, they denied the appeal. Second time they approved the case. So very unpredictable system. If it was somebody who didn't have faith in me, they would have said, Rajiv, what are you doing? You're just making money off of it. But I was so convinced that they were wrong and he's such an exceptional individual, we were able to win that case. Same for actors, same for people who are in other categories in athletics as well as education. We can do these cases. Sometimes people qualify under more than one category. Then we pick and choose whichever is the strongest one. So far, how are you clear about what is going on?
Yes.
Okay. I also want to take a quick opportunity to talk about 3 different visas that can help people to come to the United States first, especially scientists or extraordinarily qualified people in whatever category they fall. There is a visa called O1. O1 is for those people who have outstanding qualifications. Very similar to EB1A, extraordinary ability. Okay. So O1 visas, what is the benefit? While the green card is going on or before the green card started, you can apply for O1 visa. It is not subject to any quota like H1s are subject to quota. O1 is not subject to any quota. You apply today, you can do it premium processing in a few weeks, you got the approval. Premium processing means you pay $1,300 extra to the government. In India, we used to call it bribe. Here we call it premium processing. Okay. So the only thing is this is streamlined corruption. Maybe not, but let's call it that for a moment. Okay. So if you apply premium processing, you could get approval very quickly. You can do premium processing of EB1A also. You can do premium processing of EB1B also. You cannot do premium processing of EB1C, which is for international managers and executives. That's the category I'm not covering under this discussion because our focus is on EB1A, EB1B, and somewhat on national interest waiver. National interest waiver is kind of a yucky category because it's impossible to define and it takes too long for most people who are coming from these countries that I mentioned. Okay. Now it's time to get down to it and see what do you have to prove to win your case under EB1A, under EB1B, or even national interest waiver. Okay. So I am on that page on our website where we went first to green card and citizenship, then we scroll down to EB1 overview, and that is the page we are on. Okay. You can actually do under work visa, you can look at H visa, you can look at O visas, which I just talked about. You can do some research here. And this is not the only website in town. There are plenty of other good websites. I would recommend that trust only, if you are going to make some very big decisions, trust only government websites for information. Because under the law, any information given on government website, on government forms, is pretty much binding on the government because it's considered to be written law. Okay. Our information can be outdated. We try not for it not to be. Um, Other people's information can be outdated. And even better, you can just talk with a lawyer before you go into anything. Okay. I also want to point out to you that we have conference free community conference calls, and you'll also notice that people leave their comments. See, there are comments, and I respond to them as many times as I can. You can ask your questions here. You can tweet to me. You can FaceTime. I'm sorry, Facebook. You can Google Plus. We are all over the social media. You're welcome to call us, ask us a question. Even better, join us in the community conference calls, one every Thursday. Uh, Let me rephrase that, one every other Thursday. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Now let's look at the extraordinary ability alien category. They say we are going to give you 10 categories of documentation. Okay, you provide us those 3 out of those 10, we'll consider you for the category. Remember, just because you meet 3 out of 10 for extraordinary ability alien doesn't mean you won. First, they see whether you even meet. Then they want to see what level you meet it at. Because barely qualifying and really qualifying are two different things. It's kind of a two-step analysis. First, they say, okay, potentially you qualify under these 3 categories, but you don't really qualify because your degree of accomplishment is not high enough. You've got publications, but they are not in high impact journals. You've got publications, but there are only 3 publications. You've got publications, but you have no citation. You have publications, but they have no significance. So because research means you'll publish. So in some ways, these categories are very heavily tilted towards pure rather than applied scientists. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, let me move you over here and let's go to what are they looking for? 3 out of the following 10. Have you received nationally or internationally recognized prizes or awards for excellence in your field? Nationally or internationally recognized. Okay. So actually, there was a lot of controversy about the use of the word prizes or awards. At one point, government started insisting it has to be more than one because the regulations use plural. You know how lawyers have nothing better to do in life, they argue about stupid things. But I guess that's what life is made of. Sometimes the details are very important. So, but today's thinking is that it doesn't have to be plural, that this is just language, and we are going to ignore it. Once again, you never know what tomorrow they are going to do, but today this is their thinking. Okay, so nationally or internationally recognized prizes or awards. What about scholarships? Probably not unless they are competitive and we can prove them as being very difficult to obtain and that 3,000 people applied and the selection was merit based. But if you are a student, they may not accept that. They want, remember, it's in the field of excellence or field of endeavor. So they could say that this is just as a student, this is not as a scientist. Okay, I'm going to go over the general criteria, then I'm going to look at your resume and point out to you where things could be different, where we could meet with the requirements, and where we could not. Another is, and as I'm explaining this to you, you could be thinking in the back of your mind things that you have not updated on your resume that I'm looking at on LinkedIn. You could always point out to me that, Rajiv, we've got other things that we haven't looked at yet. Okay? Sure. Then they say membership in associations where outstanding achievement judged by your peers is a precondition, which is the second bullet point here. Okay, so it's not enough that you're a member of American Biological Society where you have just paid the dues and become a member. Anybody can become a member. I can become a member if I pay the dues. By the way, my first degree is in biology and chemistry. So I always tell people that my first love was botany. I got married to law, but my woman on the side is information technology. So I really had and I still have 3 loves in my life. Actually, back in 1981, when I finished my bachelor's degree in science, I think I can still draw the floral diagrams of all the angiosperms, the 20 families that we studied, because I really enjoyed botany so much. You didn't have to kill anybody, and it was all around you. When we read about Markensia or Rixia, you could see it growing on the trees. Funaria is right outside your door. You don't have to go far looking for it, right? Lichens were growing on the rocks. You could see them all over. So it helps. In my field, it helps to make your case if I understand what I'm writing about. So if I look at your background and I see genetic engineering or microbial engineering, it helps to make the case if I understand the significance of what you do. Okay, so associations have to be those where induction can only occur if you are extraordinarily qualified. If induction into a society or membership is merely a matter of paying the dues, it does not count. That okay? Shall I go on to the next one?
Yes, correct.
Then they talk about published material about you, and don't mind if we call you alien. That's just the law. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're coming from Mars, but that's just the way we define people who are
Right.
from abroad. It's, I think, in many ways it's a very odd designation, but I guess we've been using it forever. So published material about you in professional or major trade publications or other major media. Now remember, it has to be about you. What if it is about your work? We are okay with that as long as it is not just not a two-line blurb on page 11 of a newspaper, because they want to show that you are a person of significance who has been noticed publicly, either in your own trade or profession or generally by media.
Okay.
Okay, people say, how about my citations? That doesn't count. That doesn't count. They are talking about articles, and they don't have to be two-page articles, but as long as they are of significant length and outline the fact that you are a very distinguished individual, we recognize your accomplishments, those would work. Okay. Third is, oh, I'm sorry, we are now on one, two, three, fourth.
Fourth.
You are the judge of the work of others individually or on a panel. What does that mean? What if you've acted as a reviewer for publications? Does that count? And the answer is maybe, but not really. Why? Because government has been issuing these requests for evidence, which is like a kickback from the government asking more questions when we file a case. Their RFEs will say, well, when you are a PhD, you are supposed to review papers. Okay, everybody who has a PhD has done it. What makes you special? What could make you special is quantity or quality. So if you are a reviewer for science or for nature, you could have a good argument that these are the premier journals with an impact factor of 30. Okay.
Mhm.
Or if you are actually on the editorial board of a publication, that would help your case. That would be considered to meet the requirements. So I said, in order to meet this requirement, judge of the work of others, you could look at quantity or quality. What if you have reviewed papers 50 times or 60 times? I think that would make your case. Because I have seen cases decided by the Administrative Appeals Office, which is the next higher office in USCIS, where they said, hey, this gentleman has done 10 different reviews for 10 different publications. We think he qualifies. But that's iffy. It is much better to just be inducted in an editorial board, become a member of an editorial board to solidify your situation. Okay. So, what if you are, for example, a member of some kind of national science foundation and you review people's other scientists' applications for grants? I think that would qualify. Because what are you doing? You are judging the merit of somebody's proposal to see if they deserve funding. Okay, that would probably qualify. So this is another criterion. Remember, we have to meet 3 out of these 10 for EB1A, 2 out of 10 or out of actually, I think six. Two out of six. So far, they are the same. When the different ones come, I'll tell you. But two out of six for EB1B. The prices are the same in both sides. Membership in associations is the same on both sides. Published material about you is the same on both sides. Judge of others' work is the same on both sides. Next is we can provide evidence of your original scientific, scholarly, artistic, athletic, or business related contributions of major significance. Not only must you have original scientific work, see, after all, to get a PhD, you have to do original work. You can't just copy and paste. Okay. But if you want to qualify for this category, you have to also show that it is of major significance. How do you do that? Well, what if I developed a new methodology for doing, let's say, DNA splicing, gene splicing, which has become so well recognized that it's being used by 8 major labs in the country, or nationally, or internationally. Now, that would say it is of major significance because it's being deployed, it's being used. It has changed the way people used to do their business. They're looking for that kind of original scientific contribution. Okay. Then we come to the next one, which is, and this is also the same. Well, this one is major significance is not required under EB1B. It's a little different there. EB1B simply has the same criteria but with smaller degree of accomplishment required. If you want to grab a cup of tea or something, I would understand. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. I'm sure you are used to sitting through boring lectures. That's part of the academia, right? So, going back to scholarly articles in professional or major trade publications or other major media. Here again, not only do they want to see your articles, let's say you've written an article in the Journal of Microbiology. They want to know what is the impact factor of this journal. Okay, it's got to be a high impact factor. Two, how many times have you been cited, not counting your own self citations in other papers you wrote or citations from your own research group. How many times have you been cited by the outside world? Okay, have you been noticed? And then the third thing, they still ask you, what is the significance of your publication? Even though they don't say it, they often ask you. Okay, again, the idea is the same. Sometimes you think about it, you did the research and you published based upon that research. Can they count as two different evidence? I think so. I've used it. But why? One is original scientific research, the other one is original scientific publication. They are two different things.
Right.
So we've done that, and that also works. Now, so far we have covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think these are the 6 that are common on both sides. Then we come
First
to.
6.
I'm sorry.
First 6 is common to both
Common.
EB1A and 1B.
Yeah, I believe so. I'll double check that. We'll go to EB1B also. We'll review it really quickly again. Then we come to this part, which is not applicable to you, which is for artists. Their work has been displayed in artistic exhibitions or showcases. Okay. Next one, which is applicable to everyone, performance of a leading or critical role in distinguished organizations. If you have been a thought leader in the United Nations, that's one example. If you've been thought leader, even in private organizations like, let's say BARC, if you've been a thought leader in Bhabha Atomic Research Center, I think that's a distinguished organization. It's a well-known, even IIT would be a distinguished organization. There are articles written about IITs. Now they are considered to be one of the premier institutions worldwide. So these are the things. Some of this is left open. Remember, it is not what you are, it is what you can prove you are that is most important. When I first came to this country, I don't know if you had the same problem. I found it very odd that I'm writing my resume and I have to use all this hyperbole. I have to, oh my God, look at me, how great I am. I felt like Donald Trump, you know. Look at me, I'm the best. Look at me, look at me. It was so difficult to write a resume. Unfortunately, if you want to win this case, you have to do that. You have to beat your own drum and say, look at me, how great I am. I'm so delightful. Okay. So, have you performed a leading or critical? Remember, it is not just leading, it can be critical. Were you critical to a research effort? Were you critical to a long lasting project? These are the things that could also be proven. And now remind me to not
So,
for, go ahead.
can it be supported by a recommendation letter from my, say, my boss or manager?
Of course. Here is the fun part. I was going to come to, I was about to tell you, don't let me forget to talk about recommendation letters because they are both necessary and useless. I'll explain that to you. Certain things you can only prove through recommendation letters. What is the significance of your work could potentially be proven through recommendation letters. What is the significance of your articles, what you have done could be proven through recommendation letters. Have you performed a leading or critical role? It will have to be through recommendation letters. It's difficult to prove otherwise. But here is the fun thing. USCIS says if a recommendation letter is created by somebody who knows you personally, we give it less significance. So my question is, I can't ask a stranger on the street to give me a recommendation letter. It has to be somebody who knows me. But they say we want to talk with people who know you through your work. So a scientist in Sweden read your article and was so impressed that he wants to write you a recommendation. Well, it's a very stupid requirement. But the ways of the Almighty and USCIS are difficult for ordinary mortals to understand. Okay. So recommendation letters are required, but they cannot make your case. So that's why I said they are necessary and useless. What we do is we make sure that we get recommendation letters from well-recognized scientists as much as possible. Okay. Um, Underlying all of these requirements, there is an element that we are going to prove that you have sustained national or international acclaim. Um, and acclaim does not necessarily mean you've got to be famous in the whole world, but at least you've got in your own field considerable recognition as a reader. Okay. The next point is evidence that you either now command or you have commanded a very high salary as compared to others in the field. This can also be misleading because if somebody comes out of, um, and I don't mean any disrespect to any college, but let's say XYZ college from, I don't know, backwoods Ludhiana with a degree in MBA, and somebody comes out with a degree from Wharton, their salaries are going to be different naturally. So if you try to set up that as a case, you may not win. So if a guy from Wharton says, look, I'm getting my first job at $200,000, and look at my colleagues who graduated from this backwoods college in Ludhiana, they're all getting $3,000 a year, that is not a good comparison. Okay. So when you talk about high salary, you have to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. That's just something to keep in mind. The next one is for evidence of commercial success in the performing arts, again, not applicable to you. We have some bullet points here for artists that they should read through. And of course, I'm always happy to talk with anybody and we can record a separate one for them. I don't want to take your time on this, but there are certain things that are unique to artists. There are certain things that are unique to athletes. In some ways, getting EB1A for artists, whether they are from Bollywood or from uh, a performance industry in North Korea or South Korea, but not North Korea. South Korea, theirs are a little bit easier standards in some ways. It is a little bit more difficult. And I also wanted to point out, if I haven't done that already, that these categories are easier in some ways for pure rather than applied scientists. Why? Because if you're an applied scientist, and I had one just 5 minutes ago when we started talking, I was talking to a lady from New Delhi who is an applied scientist. And the problem is her research is all proprietary. Her employer will probably have her crucified if they found out that she was sharing proprietary information in international publications. So naturally, applied scientists will have fewer publications. They might have fewer citations. Criteria are a little bit different, but of course that doesn't mean we don't set that up. Let's scroll down. So far, everything is clear on me.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to add another thing. There is a residuary category in both sides, and I think that was the seventh one that is recently added just a couple of weeks ago. In both categories, in first category it was already there, EB1B, they just added that if for some reason to your industry or to your resume, any of these or some of these are not applicable, you can give us comparable evidence. So let us say, for example, that you've not done a lot of lab work, but you were instrumental in the engineering of the Mars mission. Okay, now that is not strictly R&D, or it's not strictly research, it's R&D. You could still qualify because it shows some extraordinary accomplishments. Okay, so I'm probably giving a bad example, but this is just came to my, whatever came off the top of my head. The idea is that we can still give other comparable evidence. That okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at outstanding professors in research. Again, the bottom line is very simple. You got to have a job, you got to have 3 years experience. And if you look at it, these are the same things: receipt of major prizes or awards for outstanding achievement, membership in associations, published material about you, judge of other people's work, original contributions, scholarly books or articles. Same criteria, but they harass you less. They ask you
So you have to.
meet two out of these.
So here, two out
Two,
of six.
two. Yeah. So I was talking to this young scientist before you, and everybody that I've always spoken with, I've always recommended two really easy, well, not easy, but two things that you could shoot for in any of these categories is being a member of an editorial board. That would help your case right away. And two, write a book. If you can, write a book or a book chapter, because then they don't get into citations, because books may not be cited as much. Okay.
Right.
So these two things I would say would help. I want to address national interest waiver just for 2 minutes separately. But so far, have you understood an overview of what we've talked about?
Yes.
I'm going to look at your resume and start dissecting your qualifications separately, and they will serve as a model for other people as well to understand what would work and what would not work. Probably, because I'm making guesses here. I will be only too happy to admit I have incorrectly assessed resumes before, and people have been kind enough to remind me that Rajiv, you said I didn't have a case, I won. Okay, I'm happy for them. But remember, I said that not because it gives me any benefit, but because I felt, in my opinion, you did not have a good case. That doesn't mean I won't try. I'll be happy to try it. We win, great. But I don't want to take your money without being absolutely convinced that we have at least a presentable case. Nobody can predict win or loss. But the thing is, since I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and we focus very heavily on employment and business-based immigration, I think my guesses are pretty good. I mean, I would say maybe 9 times out of 10, or maybe even 99 times out of 100, I'm right. But being right has no satisfaction. Winning has satisfaction because we did something nice. It's fun to be part of somebody's green card process, even after so many years. When we win a green card, everybody's excited. It's kind of funny. In some ways, it's not a typical law firm because we take everything personally. We win, we are happy. We lose, we are very unhappy. That said, um, I'm not addressing multinational managers or executives. I don't know if we have a write-up on national interest waiver. Let's see if we don't. We go back to green cards. And EB2, yeah, NIW. It may be only for physicians. Oh yeah, no, NIW is there. You can actually read through this. There was a case decided by. It's funny when initially this law came out back in the year, I think it was October 2000, almost 16 years ago, a little bit less than 16 years ago. We got so many national interest waivers approved. I mean, EB1s and national interest waivers were so easy then. If you had a PhD, you could get either one of those. Okay. National interest waiver, as I said, is an interesting bird because their criteria are so loosely defined. Within national interest waiver, there is a branch of national interest waiver called request of an interested government agency. Okay, it has to be a federal government agency. And there are some agencies, like the Department of Defense, had a well settled procedure in the United States. If you wanted to apply for an NIW through them, they had prescribed set of documents you had to fill out, send them to the Undersecretary of Defense's office, and then they either recommended or not recommended. It's funny, when you file an EB1A, EB1B, or a 9W case, typically your pile of evidence is about 600 pages. Okay, but when you file it through requested government agency, it's 3 pages. Because all you need is a request from the government agency that says, we are interested in Arindam, he is important to us, please approve his green card. It's as simple as that. But remember, it's still EB2. They cannot make that faster. It's still going to take you 9 years, okay, or 8 years, or whichever country you are from, depending upon that. If you're from other countries, like if you're from other countries other than China, Mexico, Philippines, India, you're going to be equally happy with national interest waiver or EB1, same amount of time. But from people from these countries, the times are very different. Okay, now those are the two things about national interest waiver. You can read up on that a little bit more. I've shown you the method. I was hoping that if I teach you to fish, I won't have to feed you. So, but you're welcome to always call back. I'll be happy to, we can do as many conversations as you need. It's always fun talking to you guys. So we've covered national interest waiver, we've covered EB1, EB1B, we've covered O visas, we haven't covered H1s. I'll make it really quick. H1s are available for any occupation for which a specific degree is required. So if you have a degree in what in India we call BA Arts, you probably won't qualify. But if you have a BA in economics, because it's a specific discipline and the job that is being offered requires that discipline, you can get H1B visa. H1B visas are subject to quota. You can't get them all year around. You can get them during a certain season. Starts on April 1st. Easy to remember, All Fools Day starts on April 1st. And usually your chances of winning are a little bit around 50-50 because there are twice as many applications as there are positions. If you are, on the other hand, working at an exempt position, such as a university's position or a non-profit research organization or a government research organization, there's no quota for H1s. And I remember I said it's the position that's exempt, it is not the employer. So if I am a contractor and I hire people from India and place them to work at National Institute of Health, because National Institute of Health is exempt and the jobs are exempt, your H1 is exempt. Even though I am not exempt, I'm a private employer. Important distinction, just to keep in the back of your mind. Okay, so H1s, O1s are for temporary visas. Once you come into USA or simultaneously, you can also be processing green card. Chances are if your O1 is approved, your EB1 is also going to get approved. Chances, but not always. That okay so far?
Yeah, I have a question. Earlier, I had H1B during my postdoc for 3 years, 2009 to 2012.
Yeah, I saw that.
Then I came back. So I heard that H1B visas can be renewed for 2 times, 3 years at a time. I don't know whether I can
well
apply fresh or how does that work?
It's a very interesting issue. First of all, I think your H1 was for a university, right? When it is for a university, you haven't become quota exempt because you were at a quota exempt job already. If on the other hand you had a job with a private employer we could discuss whether you can get an H1 without being subject to the quota. Quota exam jobs are always quota exam. So you could get a university job tomorrow if you want. No problem. H1 is available all year round. However, if you want to go into private employment, you'll have to go through the quota system. If, on the other hand, you had an H1 through Ciba-Geigy or through Pfizer, you could then become quota exempt because you had a quota job which you have used, and you can use that because you've been counted in the quota already. You can go anywhere. But when you are in a quota exempt job, you can only go to another quota exempt. If you want to apply for a private employer, you have to go through the quota system.
Great.
Okay. So, shall we go over your resume?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. You have several years of experience, and your areas are microbial pathogenesis and vaccine development. I think these areas could be potentially set up as national interest waiver also, because we have so many infectious diseases coming out, new viruses and new bacteria. And when you have some extraordinary accomplishments in pathogenesis as well as vaccine development, we could try to set that up as a national interest waiver. We don't like it because you are India born. By the way, if you got married to a woman who was born in France, whether she is Indian passport holder or doesn't matter, you can actually use her country of birth for your benefit. That's called cross chargeability.
But I'm married to Indian.
Wow, tough luck there. Okay, for immigration wise, not a good idea. Then we've already noticed that you've got several years of research as well as a teaching experience. So potentially you could qualify for EB1A or EB1B because experience-wise you've got plenty, right? So remember again, I'll rephrase it and reiterate it. EB1A, no job required, but high level of proof. EB1B, job required, employer helps you apply, but it's much easier to prove your case, and you need 3 years of experience. Okay. You've got your job, you've got, let's see, honors and awards. You've got a grant that you speak about. When you talk about grants, for example, you've got a grant from a university. If you can show it is a competitive grant and lots of people applied for it and you were selected because your proposal and your ideas were the best and because you have already achieved extraordinary things in your background, we could probably use that as a proof towards national or international awards. Okay, so that's what it is for grants. Both grants are like that. I'm looking at your first two grants on your LinkedIn page. And again, I'm not mentioning them by name because, like I said, I'm trying to preserve your confidentiality. Your face is known all over, but we don't have to have, and your first name is known all over, but we don't have to have your whole life put open to the public. So grants helpful maybe if they meet certain criteria. So this we'll put as doubtful, leave it aside. Then you got work as a postdoctoral research associate. By itself not relevant, but goes towards the 3 years if we were to do an EB1. And you've got 4 years of that already. You were a graduate research assistant, doesn't help, and you got again 2 honors and awards there. Research assistantship, again the same criteria, usually not okay, and travel grants also usually not by themselves anything major significance unless we can prove that they were competitive and nationally or internationally recognized and competed for. Okay. Then I'm going to look at your publications. So when I look at your publications, I'm always looking for one, what is the impact factor of the journal? Okay, is it 2, 3, 10, 15, 20? The higher, the better. 2, how many times were you cited? And 3, if we are doing EB1A, what is the significance of your publication? If you are doing EB1B, the inquiry usually ends at number of times cited and the impact factor. Sometimes government crosses over, they go from one to the other and we have to remind them, wait a minute, this doesn't apply. You are asking us for significance. That's for EB1A, not for EB1B. So that's where lawyers' role comes in. We remind them you are going past what is required. Okay. Um, all publications will have to go through the same criteria. Um, three for extraordinary, two for outstanding. Then I'm looking at all these publications, E. coli. Um, oh, when you have joint authors and you're not the first author, sometimes USCIS can make an issue of it. They've not always done so, but sometimes they can. We had a very interesting case from CERN. Are those the guys who discovered, quote unquote, the God particle? I think CERN was, right? CERN?
Yes, right.
Somebody from CERN, a
European.
scientist, right? Somebody from, what are the called? They're called quarks, right? I forgot
Yeah.
quarks. I was very bad in physics. I almost failed in my physics exam.
God particle is boson, I
Oh,
guess.
boson, yes, yes.
Boson.
Higgs
Right.
boson, not quark. Higgs boson.
Right.
You're right. Thank you.
Right.
That's the guy who adds mass to these particles. So one of the guys from that team, I reviewed their resume, and you see the thing is, some of these the research is so extraordinary that the research itself can qualify you even though there were 75 scientists on that team, and
Yes.
you are just one of the scientists, but the research itself is so extraordinary. I mean, it has turned it really it can become, because of the importance of the project itself, a non-issue that you are one of the 75 instead of being the only one. Okay, so doubtful whether being a second, third, or co-author is by itself a problem. It can be. It really is up to the government.
And another thing I want to mention here that sometimes impact factor depends on the number of citations per year.
Right.
So if the journal is very focused, for example, I
Yeah,
worked in
I
veterinary area,
understand it. I
which
understand
is
it. I
very
understand.
selective area.
I understand. What you are saying is, if my area of expertise is super, super specialized, instead of having 20,000 scientists working in it, I'm going to have 200. Out of 200, only 5 have cited me because not all 200 are working on the same thing. We need to
And
explain that. We need to make that clear to the
yes,
government, and we can do that. We've done that in the past.
yes. Another thing is if you work in back long time, so maybe after 5 years, people started appreciating the work or started
Yeah.
actually replicating the work, and then the citations might increase.
Yeah, we have those cases too where my article came out 6 months ago and it's still not being noticed by people. Okay. Unfortunately, that puts you at a disadvantage because government looks at the results. Okay. So that's not going to help you much. We can make the claim, that's not going to help you. By the way, um, the laws that were passed in the United States by the upper house. In India, we have Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, right? Lower house, higher, upper house. Here we have House of Representatives and the Senate. Not exactly the same idea, but the same structure loosely. Okay. Senate approved an immigration bill. I spent, I don't know how many hours studying that, 1,100 pages of nonsense information because it never got passed. In that bill, they had made some very special accommodations with scientists with PhDs. Those from US PhDs had a better um, inroad to immigration, but even people with PhDs from other countries had some special considerations. So what I'm hoping for is this: that it is the sense of Congress that we need to encourage people like yourself who are highly qualified, no matter where you are or where you are from, to come to the US and work with us. Chances are that will become recognized in future laws also. And I would encourage everybody, guys, follow our tweets. It's right here. You can follow us on YouTube, Google Plus, LinkedIn. I mean, I will name it. We are very active on social media. I enjoy connecting with people. So feel free to do that. Let me just finish your resume. Make sure I'm not missing anything. publications, publications, publication. Okay, so if I were in your situation, my first priority would be to find a job. And for somebody like you, it would be easier because you worked here before. So you already have a good knowledge of the culture, work environment, language. I think you are more easily hireable than somebody who's not worked here before. I would get a job, and as a part of the job negotiations, I would make it clear to them that I wanted to apply for my green card. I can pay for it because there's no requirement that the employer pay for the green card for EB1A people. There are certain requirements for other people, for H1s also, but for EB1A, you could pay the entire amount. It's not a problem. And the employer only has to give you a letter which is offering a job, and the letter will say this is a permanent job, but only as long as we have funding available. And we intend to seek funding.
Right.
And also as long as Arindam is performing well. If he shows up drunk, drunk to work and is dancing on the tables, we're not going to hire him anymore. And that's okay. So the job continues to be at will. Normally, these letters are very easy for the employers to give because we have them tell the truth and nothing but that. So look for a job. Let us bring you in on an H1, which is quota exempt, or a quota H1, or even an O1 if you do those two things I mentioned. Get into an editorial board, okay, and write a book or a book chapter. So that would
I
be.
have already written a book chapter.
I haven't seen it.
I have written this equalized stress response, the tool for detection of toxicity in toxigenomics.
Give me 1 second.
Uh,
Where was the publication? Where did the publication occur? Who is the publisher?
2008.
Who is the publisher?
John Wiley and Son. John Wiley and
So
Sons.
international. It's not just confined
Yes,
to.
yes.
And you wrote a book chapter.
That's the book chapter, right?
Yeah, I think just get into an editorial board, then we at least have a case for EB1B. Okay, that would be my recommendation. Why don't you ask me any other questions you might have?
Yeah, in 2012, actually, I applied for a couple of places in the US. When I came back, and I felt like, well, I should go back. So I applied a couple of places, and one I applied to one was expiring by that time in 2012. Uh, so I applied to Wisconsin, and so they said we need you to have a visa. We cannot arrange a visa H1B for you. Later, when I came back, I had an interaction with one of the Yale professors, and he's also said the same, that we need a visa. You have to arrange it for your own. Unless you provide that evidence, we cannot hire you. Something like that.
Okay.
I didn't understand.
No. That's it. Because see, what is the professor going to know about immigration? The way it works is H1s are the application of an employer. They have almost no role from you other than providing copies of your degrees and your resume. The employer is required to pay for a large part of it, if not all of it. I would actually recommend that employer should pay for everything. Okay, so it really is an employer initiated, employer generated process. You can recommend your own lawyers, that's not a problem. But universities typically do these cases through their internal staff. Okay, they don't really we've worked with universities before. They don't usually go to outside counsel. They go do this themselves. So what you should have done is you should have told your professor to call the university HR or the international students office. Many times the ISO or the DSO, let me rephrase that, the international students office is involved in the process. Okay, so you can talk with them because there's another visa called J1 visa, which is used by international scholars and scientists. The problem is many times the J1 visa has a home residency requirement, which says after you have finished your research, we'll give you $25,000 or $50,000, but then you have to go back to your home country for 2 years. You cannot convert to any other status unless you can get a waiver. And waiver is given only on 4 grounds. Extreme and exceptional hardship to your US citizen or green card holding spouse or child. Okay. Uh, Political asylum type. If I go back to India, Modi will have me shot. Okay. Because of my religious belief or my social group or, you know, so some kind of persecution type. Third, request of a government agency. We are familiar with this animal. So request of an IGA, interested government agency. And fourth, some cases, a no objection from your home government. So J1 visas are a possibility too, but not all J1 visas have the 2-year home residency requirement. So if you can get a J1 without the 2-year home residency requirement, that is as good as any other visa. Okay, so no problem looking into that. Why universities prefer the J1 many times? Because J1 doesn't require them to give you a certain amount of money as salaries. H1 does. H1 has a minimum set out by law. So for an employer to tell you, you arrange for the H1, it's impossible. And I'll tell you another thing. This has also happened to us. We started working with the universities on their case. We filed the case. 6 months into the case, the HR called us. They were very upset. They said this was never cleared with us. So basically, the department chair signed off, not realizing they have to clear these cases with the university. They have their internal procedures. So this was many years ago. Since then, we have become a lot smarter. So when somebody from the technical side or departmental side approaches us, we always tell them, before we get started on the case, please make sure the university HR is okay with this. Okay, so this is all employer generated, employer initiated, and recommended is that employer paid process. Okay, you could do an O1 paying for it yourself, and the employer could give you an offer letter. That's all they would be required to do. But O1s are, like I told you, O1s are as unpredictable as EB1s or national interest waivers. I always give the example of, think of a monkey running with a gun. You don't know what he's going to do. He could shoot you, he could shoot himself, he could shoot his neighbor, or he could just sleep with the gun under his head. You never know. It's kind of that process. I don't mean to call USCIS monkeys. They are not. They are hardworking people. But they're not qualified to make these decisions. Because, if I am a biochemist, I can make a decision about a biochemist. If I'm a biochemist, how can I make a decision about a kuchipudi dancer? I'm not qualified. When this process was initially proposed, the idea was that there'll be a expert panel of outside experts set up for each of these endeavors, but it never was. So when the regulations were passed and when the laws were passed, that panel idea got dropped, and our fate was left in the hands of tosses of coins. Heads you win, tails you lose. I mean, sometimes that's what it looks like. Little bit more predictable than that, but not a whole lot. Anything else, Arun?
Yeah, I will go through this web page and read.
Oh, I lost
I'll
your.
let you know.
Yeah, of course. Let
I
me
said,
know. Yeah, no, you have my email address. Drop me an email. By the way, for people who are trying to contact us, you can just click here and contact us through this. The same page also opens if you go contact us, and you can just
and,
give us your name, etc., and we'll be happy to talk with you. So, okay, well,
and
Arindam, really nice talking with you, and thank you for your permission to record this and share with public. They'll figure out who you are. Not much I can do about it, but I think you're okay with that. I hope so. Okay.
yeah, thank you so much for your help.
My pleasure. Talk to you again soon. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye. Every other Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we host free community conference calls. Everybody is welcome to join. Some people post questions ahead of time. You can take membership in our forums. All of the details are there on our website, immigration.com. You can take membership
ahead of time, and you know, it's instantaneous. It happens right away. And post your questions beforehand, or you can just log in. The phone number and all are provided: 202 800 8394, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time every other Thursday. We have free apps for both Apple iOS platform for your iPhones and iPads, as well as for Android. Just look for immigration.com, immigration.com, the period dot, and the application should show up.